Hey everybody.
Hi.
So let's see. So we're on the third one, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Growing older and wiser again, and now we're on lesson 3. So or session 3 or whatever we call it. Has anybody had a chance to read through this?
Yes,
I
I did, but I didn't write much.
We haven't.
I'm sorry, Pastor.
Listening to the young is the title. Hmm. Sorry. Okay. Listen to your elders, for goodness sakes. When you're young, we don't mind to hear it. When we're older, we say to ourselves, but by that time, who is actually listening? Once we have lived a certain number of years and accumulated a certain amount of experience, shouldn't younger people defer to us? Haven't we earned that right? Scripture doesn't admonish the younger to respect the older. On the other hand, wisdom is not the automatic accompaniment of aging. Wisdom comes not from the calendar, but from God the Creator. When are you most likely to listen to guidance from a younger person? When using technology. Sometimes there's the phone. Yep. Or what's the other one? Navigating is another one. Like, yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. Why don't you read a couple books up in the car? Why don't you do that things with the Well, my favorite one is, on Google Maps, you can actually do walking directions too, or you can do mass transit.
You get walking in and you didn't know you had it, and it's telling you it's taking all these hours to get someplace.
Oh, well, yeah, that too. Stop saying you were driving.
Something's wrong here.
That's pretty good. When are you least likely to listen? And you're pretty sure you're right. Okay. I like to put it when young people start talking about history. And it's like, okay. You're like, what? I'm sorry, what did you learn in history class? Yeah. That's when I start really. I don't listen at all to anything they have to say about that. Because it's like, you have no perspective. You haven't lived long enough to know anything about history. And what you're learning in those books, I'm not sure is actually history anymore. So, okay, so let's we did that. Okay. Personal reflection. So, how do you respond when a younger person approaches you to make a suggestion or try to give you advice? Okay, you have a problem speaking your mind, huh? What they won't listen because they think they're right, right? Well, that is.
Sometimes it's helpful.
I mean, the suggestion.
Yeah.
I agree with you on this. Well, I think it depends how they approach you too. Yeah. Yeah. If they're going to be all bossy and know it all. Well, okay. For instance, if a young person walked in and said, "Okay, we're going to do a potluck for Sunday, and this is how we're going to do it," without consulting anyone at church, consulting anyone that's maybe done 1,000 potlucks to see what maybe works, maybe what doesn't work, they just come in and do it, right? And you try to. Sometimes you need to keep it open. Sometimes you need to.
I know.
I don't know why that's actually the same way. But sometimes, they come in and it's like, oh, this isn't working. Yeah. But okay. I was visiting a friend in the hospital, and I was kind of being reluctant because she needed, her mouth was dry, and she needed some, it was just about time she could get her ice chips or water, and she was really, really thirsty, and her time was up.
So yes, I'm gonna she needed to put the cut off. And then there, and so this young nurse's aide comes and she says, the doctor gives the orders and then the nurses carry them out.
Oh, no.
And I thought, okay, yes, ma'am. I didn't work in the hospital for over 30 years. To be told that, it's pretty aware of that. But she says, the doctor gets the orders, and then the nurse will carry them out.
You're past your time for your Tylenol, you're like, then what? Get recorded.
So sometimes you miss
Yeah.
an hour because you want them to stay
Right.
nice.
You suppose they would have done that if you didn't have gray hair?
I don't think so.
That's
Absolutely.
that's
Absolutely.
right.
Absolutely.
Gray hair.
But I didn't, it wasn't,
You're old and you can't hear and you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. And it wasn't, I didn't follow it up because it wasn't the most important. You know,
Yeah.
I had to deal with that every day and
Yeah.
we get to understand.
Yeah, I agree.
So experience makes a difference in your position too, from your stance. As far as knowing when a person needs something to make them comfortable.
Yeah.
Too.
But how many of you guys here, I think we all know doctors and do the orders. And then smooth. I could have said that, but I didn't want to be crazy. Anywhere else, they do.
So, second part of this question, do you think younger people find you easy or difficult to approach?
Depends on the day. Depends what you're working on.
Yeah. You know, if you're working on a need in your own house and somebody's living there to help you. Somebody's there. They're helpful. Somebody's there.
So, like, if you're, like, say, maybe it's something here at church, right? Let's see.
Most kids do the kids are
Yeah, I think they find them very easy. Very
he said, how do you know how to do this? Or, I don't know. If something was smiling into it, suspensions, yeah, something. He says, oh, okay. So I don't know if you see it, or if it's on Facebook, or whatever, do it.
So, I think as a church, we need to make ourselves approachable. You know, I used to be young, and I remember coming into the church, you know, the older women and the men were always welcoming. You know, the mother, you know, Zona, you know, everybody, Bernie, you know, every walking them in. Yeah, Rudy and
I mean, I, you know, really kind of took me under her wing.
So you want, you know, they're kind of showing you want to be as welcoming as they were and as open.
Yeah.
Because I'm not in, you know, before I knew everybody.
No,
I have to remember, I have to think about things too.
me too. It's a powerful thing to know for someone to know your name. I keep telling myself. And this way we have groceries.
Or you just learn to space it until it comes to you.
Yeah, so it takes about 5 minutes.
Somebody say,
I can't see till I get home, yeah, or tomorrow.
Hello. Oh, that's really good. I just, sometimes I think people look up real similar,
Oh, yeah.
and
Or you can see them, I mean, you can picture them just perfectly, but can you think of their name? You know?
remembering names is a gift.
Oh.
it's a, yeah, I think you can.
You have to work at it. Yes, yes.
You have to have a trick to it. Yeah. But if you're gonna learn all those names, then you've got it. Like for me, I always associated. I mean, I would always go around the circle of music, and I would say everybody's name, and we would make it a big game. I would make it a big game, right? And the teachers would help me if I got stuck, but you know, there's some kids that look at it that is not a Leah. That will never be a Leah. She looks like a Rachel, or she looks like a, you know, it's just, no, it's, you know, and you get these, but I always associated the teachers with the kids. Like what class they were in.
Okay.
Like I would, like before they would even come in for music, I said, okay, this is such and such a school. Okay, she's got three little Julies, and she's got 2 Codys, and she's got 1. You know, I could go through my head, and whether I could remember them when I see the little faces, not necessarily, but I could remember the names in my head. And then I could see them in the context. And I only like I knew them all. Right. And I was trying to yourself, and they come running and the parents are going. No, I'm just like, I'm like, oh my goodness, and I give them a big hug, and I look at them, and then they say something about music class, and then typically the parents would say, oh yeah, she's always, or they'd say little ones, they're always,
When you have like 3 kids with the same name, and they're spelled all so different.
It's spelled different.
Parents about that all the time. And Jennifer, Jenny with an IE, and Julie with an I. That's why social media talking about,
There's 3 kids in the family, and y'all have a different last name.
yes,
You know,
Yes.
Yes,
that's true.
you know,
And
that didn't happen when we were younger, you know. Now,
I guess what always told me at school was I always liked to spell kids' names right.
Yes.
And then I would get a list from their own teacher and they wouldn't have their names spelled right. And it's like, I make a big effort in the office to have their names spelled right, and you can't spell your kids' names right in your own last.
Well, no, sometimes that isn't always their fault though, because it like on your computer, it will autocorrect. You know, if you're spelling a name and you're saying it's like, and all of a sudden it autocorrect, like Rachel spelled with an A, with 2 A's, that then.
that's one of the things that's kind of curious. What is wrong with these parents? And, they're just unique. That poor kid will have to spell his name. You know, and correct people, you know. And, she said, they don't think about that.
No, no, they don't. No, they don't. Okay, so our topic tonight is Job. If we haven't figured it out, Job is a character. Sometimes I can't tell if he's. When you read the book of Job, and it's like, okay, is he mad at God? Is he? You know, it's kind of, I can't read him. I decided I cannot read him. Job endured a crushing series of disasters. He lost his material wealth, his children, and his health. He was reduced to sitting on an ash heap. His own wife advised him to curse God and die. But he did not blame God. 3 friends who came to see Job insisted that he must have brought all this tragedy on himself through his own sin. Then a 4th visitor spoke So that's where we are in the story in Job 32. I think Elihu is his name, right? Yeah. Okay, so let's see. So do we want to read the whole thing first, or do you want to read it a little bit at a time, or how do you want to do this? I'm going to ask you right now what you think. Oh, there's so much to do.
Oh, let's do
So we're going to do half and see where that takes us. So let's go through verse.
Well, maybe for either up to 10 or end up to 14.
That would be my guess. Yeah, let's go through 14. Should we do that? Who wants to start? Go for it. Go for it.
These three lists of trying to answer Job because he is so sure he was right. Elihu, son of Rachel, the Buzite, and the family of Ram became very angry with Job because Job claimed he was right instead of God. Elihu was also angry with Job's three friends who had no answer to show that Job was wrong. They continued to believe him. Elihu agreed before speaking to Job because the three friends were older than he was. But when Elihu saw that the three men had nothing more to say, he became very angry. So Elihu, son of Barachel the Buzite, said this, I am young, and you are old. I was afraid to tell you what I know. I thought older people should speak, and those who have lived many years should teach wisdom. But it is the spirit in a person, the breath of the Almighty, that gives understanding. It is not just older people who are wise. They are not the only ones who understand what is right. So I say, listen to me. I too will tell you what I know. I waited while you three spoke and listened to your explanations. While you looked for words to use, I paid close attention to you. But not one of you has proved Job wrong. None of you has answered his arguments. Don't say, we have found wisdom. Only God will show Job to be wrong, not people. Job has not spoken his words against me, so I will not use your arguments to answer Job.
Interesting. Okay, why did Elihu hesitate to speak out, and how did he overcome his reluctance?
As he was younger, he thought the older, the wiser ones would speak truth.
He was respecting them. Yeah, I think he was trying to show respect. Yeah. And surely they will figure it out, right? He was waiting for them to do that. Doesn't sound like they did, though, right? He sounds like a very wise young man. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, what do you think made him speak out? Frustration?
Yeah.
They finally stopped talking themselves.
Or they gave him his chance. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I kind of wonder if he was a little frustrated, though.
Oh yeah, he was mad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I kind of feel like he's like saying that.
It makes sense while you look for words to use, so they weren't real sure about what they were arguing about. It seems like if they had to stop and
Yeah,
the answers they didn't know. Yeah, just paying close attention.
Who didn't have proof.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He was kind of under the impression that the older you are, the more wise you should be.
Mm-hmm. Well, it seemed like
Even he was under that impression. Mm-hmm. But clearly he came to a reckoning with that because he didn't call out on it. It's like, okay,
That takes a
you
lot.
guys are stupid. Just because you're old doesn't mean you're right.
I know it said stupid, though.
Well, okay.
It's always respectful when he's they call them out.
Yeah, he was very respectful, wasn't he? I don't know that. Yeah, I don't know if they would have been that respectful, but okay. Does Elihu strike you as an admirable person or not?
Yeah. We said he was respectful, so
Yes, it should have loved peace. maybe somebody you want to get to know. Well, they were arguing the verses leading up to this. They're arguing. They're trying to persuade Job to give up on God. The three friends.
And he did something wrong and brought this on himself.
Yes. And so you need to either figure this out or just give up on God and die. Yeah. And Job keeps saying, "No, God isn't doing this to punish me." He keeps saying that over and over again. God is not doing this to punish me, but then, he did that after he lost all of his wealth, and then he did that after all of his kids died, and then he did that after he started getting sick. And they're saying, like, you've got to wake up, buddy, because you're not paying attention. God is punishing you because you've done something wrong. You need to fix whatever it is you've done wrong. And he keeps saying, nope.
Since I have not been happy when the enemy fell, I have not let my mouth sin, I have not put my trust in gold.
Yes.
With all these.
Yes. Yeah, and he keeps listing all of the things that God hasn't. This is not a God thing. This is a world thing. This is, I have to stay faithful. That whole. Okay. So that's what leads up to this. And then Elihu is the fourth of the three there are actually four friends. He's the fourth of the ones. The first three are like dooms. You're going to hell and you're gonna burn in the fires of hell and there's no hope and give it up now. And Elihu's like, wait a minute. Wait a minute. You guys are older. You're supposed to be smarter. Yeah. But anyway. So he sat and listened for a long time as Job and his three friends conversed. What angered Elihu about the conversation?
Well, you just said it.
Well,
Yes.
None of the three were proving, to Job that he was wrong and God was not, or something like that.
Yeah. I think he was mostly frustrated because they just weren't listening.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, they weren't making their point either. I mean, it sounds like they were just going in circles and not really proving anything.
You wonder if they're believers. You got to kind of wonder, are they believers? Or are they, even in Jesus's time, people that were sick, it was always assumed that the parents did something wrong or they did something wrong and that's why they were sick.
Sins of the fathers.
Yes. That's a very Jewish old world tradition. Sins of the father and the mother, sins on the children. The generations, right? They're saying the generations. So, yeah. So why is age irrelevant to wisdom?
I think there's all different kinds of wisdom.
Well, there are.
You can be IQ smart, but have no street sense or common sense or, that type of thing.
Yes.
So yeah.
And you can be wise about, maybe you're wise about relationships. Or maybe you're,
Well, yeah, there's all different
seriously
areas,
about,
all different aspects of life.
Finance or
Yes.
And there's some people that haven't experienced certain things, so what can they say anything about that? It's up to you. They know. And a lot of things, people say, you can't read that in a book. You gotta experience it.
So why would we think that age would be irrelevant?
just it's not like you're young, you're done, you're old, you're wise. There's a mix. It's not like one negates the other one.
Well, I think sometimes you think, just because you've lived a long time, you've gained experience in different areas, that you would be wise about those experiences.
Sometimes it closes your mind.
I agree with that.
Never too old to learn something
Also agree. Yeah.
different.
And I think the people that are more open to that idea are some the wiser.
The wiser, yeah.
Because they're willing to look at something and think, well, or is there a reason why, like oh gosh, like before there were vaccines and stuff, before we understood how bacteria worked and how disease was spread with viruses and things, people had all kinds of suppositions about,
Ethers,
yeah,
like in the Civil War, if they were like that, they thought it was what was the name of that? Not small, there was a word for that, and they thought when it was warm and weird, it was mosquitoes
right,
that spread the disease.
malaria.
Yeah.
Yeah, and other diseases, but I mean other diseases too. I mean, think about like the plague, for instance.
Yes.
Yeah, just simple things like washing your hands, and keeping your food clean, and just silly things like that that we really take for granted. That even now these days in parts of the world, those aren't. I mean, like clean drinking water, and it's just right. I mean,
There's not a pill for everything.
and no, there's not. That's exactly right.
You have to get a pill for everything. Yeah,
There's the thing to come out. To some extent, right? So yeah, I think we agree. But
Well, like you said, it's God that grants them that. It's,
mm-hmm.
it's in your
Yeah.
being.
It was probably God that
The
finally
spirit.
said, you know what, this world is actually round. They made it round. Maybe people think it's flat. I'm not sure where you got that from. But they're still it's flat. Yeah, well, good luck with that. Good luck with that. Okay, experience shows us that as people grow older, some get wiser and some do not. And that we were just talking about. What do you think makes the difference?
You have to be a lifelong learner. You have to never think you know it all. And be open to learning, and you learn from all ages. If you think you can't learn from anybody younger, then you really close off a big resource.
Because even little kids can come up with things that are like, oh,
no,
I never thought of it that way.
Well, the way they see the world sometimes is just fascinating.
yeah,
I find it fascinating because they'll look at something, something that we've seen for years and years and years, and they'll look at it and they'll say, "Oh, that's a pond." I'm like, oh, okay, why could she do that? I can see why you would say that. I'm just like, like we always think the sky is blue. Well, it's not. The grass is not always green, right? So yeah, I get it. So on what basis? I'll say 10 to 14. Yeah. On what basis could Elihu demand that the older men now listen to him? Because he says, "Therefore I say, listen to me. I will tell you what I know."
solving the problem. That's what the answers.
That gets worse. I think.
Yeah, so maybe they should listen to what he has to say.
and he's to be following the scripture.
It kind of sounds like he is.
So he kind of has a little backing there, like he forgot that.
I wonder if he's kind of sense that maybe he's more of a believer than the other three. But or maybe he's more of a same mindset.
They all maybe
That's
say they
Job.
believe, but they believe differently.
Or maybe he's had enough life experience, even at a young age, to expect that.
Positive factors to have.
Yes. Or that. So. When have you benefited from the wisdom of someone when Although I gotta say, my mother comes to me for every time I let her help. You put this in the door. Okay, well, there's something that can work. Really quiet.
Explaining math.
Oh.
Is there so many different ways to do it that you can do
So
it?
much easier.
It's so easy to ask you, it's,
I don't even understand how they do it anymore. It's like I just,
teaching it. A lot of times they say, you're teaching me how the book wants you to do it because they're just so many different ways. I don't know, but you know, the way they do it does make sense. Because they're using what they know more than going through rote.
yeah, even
Yeah.
whatever.
And so it's more bringing out more of the clear thinking for them. Well, for the ones who get it.
Yes, but not everybody gets it.
But no,
So that's the problem.
there are so many different ways because as they're explaining it, one of the kids goes, yeah, but you know what? My dad showed me how he learned how to do it. And that makes more sense to me. And I said, oh, then yeah.
But the point is, the one
Oh, yeah,
they say that's
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
And I realized my son calls me. He was trying to test me. He had 3 answers and he said, pick one. Mine.
So if you came up with 3 answers, I can see why the kids have, they have so much involved in it. And if you make a mistake way back here, you're not gonna come up.
Well, it's the same like on the ACT test. You know, on the ACT test, typically in the math section is full of that. You know, you have the question and it's some big long story problem. And then there are 4 choices for answers, and each one of them is a logical answer if you, depending on how you read the story and how you get to the end. And like you said, if you make one mistake, you can certainly come up with that answer, or you just say, oh, I got this right, but then I missed this part, and I came up with this answer. You know, so each of the answers is very logical. You know, then you're like, and my kids never had any trouble with the math part. Well, he doesn't usually, you know, but my oldest always had trouble with the comprehension on the English part. That's part of his diagnosis, but I ended up getting him one of those study, you can get the study versions of the ACTs. And so I went through it with him and because that's where he started at the math, he whizzed right through, and the science he was good at, and the geography, I was really good at that, but the comprehension and English was just. So we went through it, and we went through the story, and I was reading the story. He was all kinds of stuff. Story that wasn't there.
Because he just thinking in his mind all these other little scenarios.
He's reading the story and then he's adding in, like kind of like kids do when you read a story. Like read the story and you look at the picture and you kind of suppose what they're doing in the picture. Well, that's kind of what he was doing. He was adding stuff into the story that wasn't actually written there. But it was interesting because the questions, the answers to the question at the bottom were some of those same things. Like if you're reading through the story and you're making this assumption here, if you're making this assumption here, you're going to come up with the same thing. If you're reading, but it doesn't really say that. Right?
Because it wasn't written in the story.
Yes. You're making assumptions about what's there, but it's not actually written in the story.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's like, yeah, and so I went through it with him a couple questions and he goes, oh, oh, I get this, Mom. He said, I shouldn't be doing this or this or this or this. I have to read just exactly what it says. Yes, that's exactly. Well, then once again, he scored like way higher the second time we took the test. I mean, and then also it was pulling down the score. It was the comprehension of English. She just wasn't getting it. You know, it's like I don't explain it. Like, she is. I would get that. That's why we study. You know, but that's just the way his brain works. It's like kids, you know, like I have no problem teaching like the math that way. But you should be open to the idea that there are kids that maybe don't learn that way. Yes, what? Right. There are kids that maybe do better with the rote learning, and maybe that's the way they should learn it. Yeah. You know, just like with music, I'm that way when I'm always teaching music to kids. I don't teach any one way to count. I teach multiple ways to count because what makes sense to one kid isn't necessarily going to make sense to the next kid, the next kid, or the next kid. And you need to be open to the idea that how they see things helps them learn, or how they hear things helps them learn.
Either learn by doing things or by hearing it or by seeing it. Everybody has to.
Yes, and everybody learns differently. Everybody learns. The majority of the world learns through seeing. I mean, the majority of us, we see something, we learn it, you know. But there are kids that if they don't actually physically do it, like if they don't physically manipulate the blocks of 10 to come up with 10, 20, 30, 40, then they don't get that whole concept of adding those all together. You know, whereas a kid who sees it goes, oh yeah, there's 10 there, 10 there, 10 there. But the kid that learns tactically, they have to actually physically move it and they have to touch it and count it. Yeah, they do. But that's the way their little brains work. You know, so who's to say that that's right or wrong? It's not right or wrong. It's just different. And if that's the way they need to learn, then we ought to accommodate that. But in the same respect, if a kid doesn't learn that way, if a kid gets totally frustrated, I've got to count this every time. Why do I have to do that? There's 10 there, 10 there, 10 there, 10 there, that's 40. I have to count them. I just have to count them. They're all right there. I can see there's 40 there. Yes. Seeing is hard because it is hard. It's a variety of kids and skills and yes, and the best teachers, the most wise teachers in the world recognize that right away. Yeah. They recognize right away that kid needs a little more help with his reading. So let's get him started on this. This kid needs a little more help with that. Let's try teaching this a little differently for this kid. Those are the teachers that are really good. And they do it intuitively because they want to help. And those are the same teachers that will, you know, if none of those ways, you have these kids, right? You try every way to know what to try to help them learn, right? And they're just not getting it. So you got to come up with something else. You got to learn something else. You got to figure some other way out to help them. Whatever that might be. Yeah, it's just someone different teaching it to them. Yeah. Oh, sorry. We got to. Okay, it's right. How did Elihu? Oh, wait a minute. We got to read the next part. Who wants to read the next part? 15 to 22, right? 15 to 22. I have it. Okay, go for it.
These three friends were defeated and have no more to say. Words have failed them. Now they are standing there with no answers for Job. Now that they are quiet, must I wait to speak? No, I too will speak and tell what I know. I am full of words, and the spirit in me causes me to speak. I am like wine that has been bottled up. I am ready to burst like a new leather wine bag. I must speak so I will feel relief. I must open my mouth and answer. I will be fair to everyone and not flatter anyone. I don't know how to flatter, and if I did, my maker would quickly take me away.
Okay, so how did Elihu feel as he wanted to speak out?
Ready to burst.
He had so many things to say.
Yeah, you just see it, right? It's like, where do I start?
Hang on.
Where do I start? So what would safeguard him from insincerity in his speech?
Being fair, not flattering any one certain one.
Well, and assuming that God's going
Yeah.
to keep him
Well, I had to answer to God.
If you want to be filled with the Spirit, you have to be ready to listen to what it says. Okay. What evidence do you see that though Job's other friends have spoken from the knowledge of their ears, they have failed to speak with the understanding that comes from God? So listeners, I'm going to rephrase this question because man, okay, it is very wordy. Okay, well, let's say it this way. With the three older friends that spoke, what gives it away that you don't feel like they're speaking from the understanding of God?
Because they couldn't convince Job that God was right. And
Or that their viewpoint of God maybe was not right.
okay. Ethan, why are you leaving? Don't be small.
Oh, was it somebody's phone? Okay, sorry. My bad. I thought it was that.
Sorry. Don't be.
They condemned him. They kind of condemned him. You know, they said, you've done something wrong. You know, they weren't being kind. Maybe that's not the right word.
Well, they had a pretty skewed view of God, maybe. I mean, from our understanding, from their understanding, maybe it wasn't.
Very Old Testament.
Yeah, it is very.
Common for that time.
I would agree. I would agree that it was very common for that time. Yeah. But clearly Job didn't feel that way. So because he didn't feel that way, why did they feel compelled to want to convince him differently? Mm.
They were trying to help him because I agree with you probably. They really, in your viewpoint, are trying, here he's on this ashy, and all of this happened, and nothing's worked. And he's done all the right things, and still nothing's worked. He said, you know, there has to be something. You did, you know.
We have people in our lives that are like that. You have anybody in your life you know of that, you know, they're convinced that they're right?
Oh, you don't know anything.
Made to laugh. Okay. So we've all, so let me rephrase this a little bit. We've all experienced those people who are very insistent that they are right.
No.
And that no matter what we say or what we do, you're not going to convince them that they're wrong. Right? So do you feel like these friends maybe were feeling that way about Job? Or vice versa.
Yeah.
Right? Job might have been feeling that same way about them. Right? So if they take that little twist, and add, you know, nowadays, like a circumstance we might encounter. Because I know I've encountered a lot of this, where they're just insistent that they are right. And you are not convinced that they're wrong. No matter what you show them, no
Well, you
matter
don't
what.
have to look very far with politics.
Oh, on both sides.
Yeah,
On both sides. And those right down the middle. I mean, you see some of these people, it's like,
Yeah.
how could you be so convinced that you are right? So, how do you deal with people like that? Do you be like the two friends and try to convince them that they're completely wrong? Or you try to be like Elihu, who says, oh, wait a minute. Maybe we need to listen more to what he's saying. Maybe we need to pay more attention. Maybe he knows what's right. He seems to have a better relationship with God than you guys do. Or do you listen to someone who's that young? Ha! How could they possibly know? Something to
Well,
think about,
I
right?
think their kids now, you gotta show them first.
Oh, yes.
You know, they don't take your word for it. Yeah. You could somehow.
And even if you can show proof,
Yeah.
they aren't
that doesn't
necessarily
always
going
work
to
either,
believe
but,
it.
I mean, it just seems like, you know,
Especially if it's something they've seen on the internet.
well,
The internet is never wrong.
That's not.
Okay, where might you be rejecting the wisdom of younger people?
I don't know, I did some of friends. And I did it going to the office. Good guys done that. And they didn't work then. You know,
They won't work now.
or, you know, it's something like, you know, we have gone through this. You haven't. I think. I don't know.
And yet sometimes times change.
Well,
At one period of like financially and different things, at one point that would not have flown, but now that's not a bad alternative. I mean, and it's not just financial, but
Oh yeah, I think financial, that's excellent.
yeah. But
I
even
mean,
church
things have
stuff,
really
you know,
changed, yeah.
years ago, but now, and we know for darn sure that things worked 50 years ago and they don't now. Certain things, you know, we have to listen to see where we are today.
After I adjust.
I was younger.
How many of us gave our kids little spanks on the butt? No, or can't even touch a kid now. It's like, holy crap. Watch these. Watch.
Not the way it was. Everyone's honest with my babysat. I told the mothers, I said, I do spend. So if you don't like that, then I'm not.
And somebody had
I'm not your babysitter.
dog training.
Yes, it's been a few years.
fascinating.
Yeah,
He's fascinating, but he always has this, he calls it a correction that he does with the dogs. So he'll just give them kind of a sharp little tap on the shoulder or on the top of their head, and he always gives a little, kind of get their attention kind of thing. I was kind of think of getting swatted in the butt. It's just kind of an attitude. My dad always used to call it an attitude adjustment. and you know, it was never meant to hurt. It was meant to get your attention. And then of course some people took it too far and you know, used it as punishment. Well, that's not what it was intended to be. I don't think it was ever intended to be that. It was just intended like, wait a minute, what you're doing is not right. You need to fix your behavior. Right. So, but I mean, I see things today and I wonder, you know, there are times when I think, yeah, Will Smith swat on the butt would do wonders with that kid. Just kind of I don't know, that's not, you can't do that these days. You can't do that these days. You just don't dare do that these days. But I think, you know, I think the correction to not do that is probably been a good one. And I think giving the kids the opportunity to correct their own behavior, like maybe sitting them in timeout or just separating them from a situation or whatever, is going to help them in the long run because you're teaching them to discipline their own behavior instead of having someone else do it for them. Yeah, I think so too. think anytime you can do that for us, that's a good thing. But I could think of a lot of other things too, where, some of the things I see, it's just like, holy crap, really? You're gonna let your kid get away with that? It's like, I can remember many times going into the grocery store and having kids throw a fit on the floor, and I just literally picked everything up. I dropped the cart of things. I'll be back, and I walk out the door with them. It's like I'm not putting up with this. But I see some things that's just like the kids are screaming and yelling and kicking and running. But maybe they look at it. I don't know. So are there times when, let's see, what steps will you take to listen more closely to younger believers? Oh, this is a good one. What steps will you take to listen to more closely to younger believers who are wise beyond their years?
I always think it's kind of interesting with confirmation and when the kids do their statements like that and really listen. You think, wow, that's meaningful.
Agreed. Or you see kids bringing, we have quite a few of some of our confirmed kids. They're bringing kids to church. They will pull Kim aside, can you look at the Bible? Yes. Listen.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, we have a lot to learn from our younger members. And I think of our little ones. I think they have taught us all a lot about what stewardship means and about what giving means. I feel like they have really, they are so creative. I'm amazed at some of the things they come up with. When I say, okay, what are we going to do with our office? They're like, wow. We'll give them some hints and suggestions. I said, now you just think about it and then come back next week and we'll talk about it again. They don't make a decision right away, but I feel like then they go home and they'll come back and they'll say, can we do this? And I'm like, well, what exactly do you mean by it? Like the one year they wanted to do, let's see, how did the kids put it? I'm trying to think how they put it. They said, we want to put together presents to give to people at the care center. I think that's how they said it or something like that. And I said, okay, so what kind of presents? Well, maybe we could get them stuff for their room, or we could get them a blanket, or we could get them, they were just naming off a whole bunch of, these things. I said, well, so you want to give them things they could use in their room? Yeah. I said, like, maybe lotion for their hands, or a sparkly pretty thing for their window, or a blanket to stay warm in. Yeah, that would be a good idea. So then we, could try to brainstorm, figure out how we might make that work. First of all, right? So we I started pricing some things out, trying to figure out how much it's going to cost. If we got, I think we figured 40. I think it was 40 of each thing. That can we really do that? Like, how much would that be? So then we sat down and kind of figured it out. And so I told the kids, I said, well, and then they came back the next week. Well, then they had more ideas for what they could give them. One of them was a puzzle book. So we said, we should get them a puzzle book. And then somebody said, well, we need to have a pen or pencil to write it with it. Well, yeah. Or sometimes people like to use highlighters. And I thought, oh, that would be fun. So then we had to figure out how to make that work. So, we figured out how much money it would cost to do all that. And can we get them like all bulk, which surprisingly you can. It's amazing. Some of the things you can get online these days. But the creativity that came out of those little kids' minds, it would just amaze me. And it amazed me that they would even think about the older members of our society that they don't really interact with, probably on a regular basis. But clearly they knew they needed stuff. Clearly they knew, and the best part about it was, and I thought, we should also make sure we should make cards to go with all of these too. Hey, we will. So we had a whole day where we put everything together. We wrapped it all together inside of a blanket. We got little throws that were like flaps on these little throws. And you wouldn't believe the thank you notes we got back. Oh, I mean, it was amazing. We got these wonderful little thank you notes back. Oh, this is so, and each of the kids made a card and they signed the card, and then they wanted to deliver them. They didn't want us to just take them out and give them to them. They wanted to deliver them, and they wanted to sing for them.
Oh, sweet.
I know, right? It's like, holy cow. What can you learn from something like that? The simplicity of a child's mind. We should be able to do this. Well, okay. And of course, guess what all the teachers are thinking? How much is that going to cost? We didn't let that stop us. I'm so proud of us that we didn't let that get in the way of what these kids wanted to do. This is what they wanted to do. This is what they wanted to make special. And we shouldn't get in that way. Right? And I think they have taught this church a lot about stewardship and about offering and about giving freely to a good cause. Whatever it might be. Like we did Westbrook Wishes 1 year, they were going to buy shoes. Right? And that was specifically what they wanted to do. They wanted to buy shoes. They weren't specific about clothes. They wanted to do shoes. Now, I don't know where they got the idea about shoes, but they got it from somewhere. And then they did Leader Dog 1 year. They did Shire's Hospital 1 year. And they've always come up with all these really
introduced to them, so as they began to be adults, see those things and say, okay.
So we're teaching them to learn to give. Right. And then they're seeing in when every once in a while I'll have a congregation member, here's $50. I want you to give this to the kids for their offering. Okay, I will, but I'm gonna tell them it's from you. And they're like, okay. It's because I want them to know who you are. I want them to make that connection that these grown-ups in this congregation love them as much as their moms and dads and parents and grandpas. These other people love them too. And they want to help you and they want to give like you do. So if they can give too, then the kids can give. It's cool. I think it's such a cool idea. And they can't take credit for it because Caitlin started it long before I took up the mantle after she left. I think that's a neat idea that they get to decide where their offering goes. If they look at this, and I make them set a goal. You guys have seen. I make a little thermometer. And I do check it every week. So we get it higher. Yeah, let's make it higher. How much higher? So, yeah, it's kind of cool. I think little kids and younger people have a lot. Okay, praying overseas. So it does say an hour later. It says, look for ways to include the views of younger people and younger people themselves in your fellowship and ministry efforts. So remember that as you're going through the next month, right? Think about ways that you can learn about values of health, wisdom, age. That's an interesting conversation. Cool, right? Can't wait for that one. Maybe I'll be more awake by then. Does it make more sense now? Were you watching online too? Watching online too. Oh, okay. Well, Kathy.
she got a book too. Oh, but she's been watching online. Yeah. And she said, yeah, I haven't had to. So,
Well, we'll find out. We do ramble a little bit, so it's not.
go off on our tangent. So we probably should say goodnight. See you later.